But dude, I've been down here for probably 10 minutes.
Oh my God, I'm an idiot. I think I texted you at like 12:18. I'm like, yeah, 10 or 12 minutes should be ready to go.
It's all right, man. I'm pretty foggy too. Trying to get back into the groove is not the easiest thing in the world after you've been out for a minute.
Yeah, what a dumpster fire that was for me waiting here. Anyway, I think we're good. We're good. All right, here we go. We're going to jump right into it as people are coming in. First order of business today. Hunter Dickinson is back, man. This is a massive development. I mean, I think the longer this went on, people genuinely started getting kind of worried that he might be gone.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a ton of specifics about how good or bad he did in the G League stuff. I mean, I think I saw little clips here and there, and he put some of his own clips out on social media and stuff like that. But I never heard like really anything definitive in either direction. I mean, maybe someone who was way more plugged into it than I was did. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As of just a little bit ago, Hunter Dickinson announced that he would be back to Michigan, and I think this is. I mean, this is like getting a 7-star recruit in the offseason. I mean, you know you're getting a legitimate 7-footer, a starting center, an all Big Ten performer, potentially an All-American to come back and be the anchor of your starting five. I think it's absolutely huge.
Yeah, it's huge, and you're right. I didn't hear anything definitive from I know that he participated in the G League event, basically the rumor going around, or some of the words that I was hearing, was that he didn't really increase his draft stock as much as he had hoped by sort of exploring. And I think he got out of the experience what he wanted. Obviously he wants to go to the NBA, but I think he got the feedback he was looking for. It's obviously huge that he's coming back to Ann Arbor. They were already going to be a solid team this upcoming season, but you have Devontae Jones announcing that he's coming back. He withdraws, and now you've got Hunter Dickinson coming back. I mean, you have got some legitimate talent. When this news came through, I'm in football mode. I'm like excited about football season. Then I hear Hunter Dickinson's coming back, and I'm like, man, I can't wait for basketball season now too. So it's good to be a Michigan fan right now.
I did the exact same thing. It's funny that you brought that up. I was just like, all of a sudden, I was like, God, I can't wait to see who the starting five is, and like how dominant they could be and what the style is. I think they're going to be more athletic this year. I think they're going to have a little bit. Maybe, I mean, it's hard to say a little bit more length when you lose a guy like Franz Wagner, but they're going to have length and athleticism and speed and, guys who can get off the floor. I mean, you're going to see a little bit more of that, I think, with this unit. And I'll have an article about this later today or tomorrow about what that starting five might look like. And I think it is Devontae Jones at point guard. You mentioned him coming in. Yep. I mean, Zeb Jackson showed some good things last year, and Frankie Collins certainly is dynamic and electric, and he's got a lot of bounce and some swagger, and can really kind of score from all three levels for a guy who's 6'1" or 6'2", whatever he is. But Devontae Jones, just crafty, old veteran, not really a great athlete. I mean, if you watch his highlight, he's not throwing it down on people. He doesn't jump real high on his jump shots. He's not a blazer up and down the floor, but he pushes the pace. He knows where he wants to go. He can get to just about any space on the floor that he wants to, and he's a scorer. I mean, He's a little bit bigger and even a little bit more creative with the ball than Mike Smith was. And I know Mike Smith was a big-time scorer for Columbia, had to really change his game when he got to Michigan. I'm curious to see what that looks like for Devontae Jones, because you don't have a Franz Wagner. You don't have an Isaiah Livers. So you're going to need a little bit more scoring, I think, from the point guard spot than you did last year. And Devontae Jones can certainly do that. So I think you go Devontae Jones at the 1, Eli Brooks at the 2. I think he's an obvious lock to start there. I think it might be Caleb Houston at the 3, the incoming freshman, a top 10 prospect in the country. Not quite as long as Franz Wagner, but in that mold. I mean, long, can shoot it, can put it on the deck, can pass, can defend. I mean, he can do it all. That's why he was ranked so high, and he's a huge piece of that number 1 recruiting class. The 4 spot is where it gets really interesting. Obviously, Hunter Dickinson starting at center at the 5. Yeah. The 4 spot is where it gets really interesting, because you've got Brandon Johns Jr., who, I mean, in flashes and when he's had to step up and start, has been really good.
Really came on in crucial spots last year for sure.
And then you've got Moussa Diabate, the other incoming freshman who is, all of 6'10", another great athlete, can step out and shoot it a little bit, but is more of an inside presence. So that's kind of where, how does he fit in with Dickinson, both of them being near, almost 7 feet tall and like to play more in the paint. Diabate can step out a little bit, but I trust Johns a lot more to step out and play off the perimeter a little bit and complement Hunter Dickinson. So that's a good problem to have.
I was just going to say,
man.
great problems for Juwan Howard, man. He's got good problems all across the board that he's going to have to figure out and solve for the upcoming season. But man, they've got depth everywhere. They've got talent everywhere. I don't know that there's a weak spot on this team.
Didn't even make a mention of like Terrence Williams, who is just he's an awesome 4-man. I mean, you could, in a pinch, he could play the 5. You don't want to put him there, but I mean,
right.
Or Brandon Johns can play the 5 when they go small and put him at the 5. He does some nice things there. I would assume Diabate can play the 5 at 6'10", 6'11", with his length and athleticism. But I guess in a perfect world, the only thing I think this team lacks is a true backup center like Austin Davis. I mean, he was so good in that role to come in and give Dickinson a blow, get a couple buckets in the paint, foul somebody hard, grab a couple boards, and then
use that pivot foot like it's nobody's business down on the block.
Wearing a hole in the floor, man. He's going around so many times, right? But I mean, you're nitpicking. I mean, you are nitpicking at this point because you don't really know like what exactly you're going to get from Diabate.
Right.
I would assume Johns is going to be better, so you could put him at the 5 and be just fine. There's not a weakness. This team, there's a slight in a perfect world, let me grab a guy here, but like there's not a spot where you look at the team and go, God, they really need X.
Yeah.
There is nothing. This team doesn't need anything, and that's crazy, man. Like I said, you barely mentioned Terrence Williams, didn't mention any of the other incoming freshmen where you think you're going to certainly get something out of some of them. I mean, I don't know if it's Kobe Buffkin, is it Isaiah Barnes, athletic scorer off the wing. You mentioned Frankie Collins a little bit playing backup point guard. I mean, I think you're going to see some contributions from those guys. And, yeah, man, what a problem to have. What a problem to have for Juwan Howard.
And it'll be interesting to see how they respond because they're clearly going to be, among that top tier in the Big Ten, and everybody's going to be gunning for them. So it'll be interesting to see, what the mental makeup of this team is. Obviously, they've got all of the, the talent on the court, but the mental makeup, I think that's where Juwan Howard can really flex his muscle and have this team prepared. And I'm just excited for the season, man. I think it's going to be a good product to watch.
Do you think Jones starts? Do you think he's the starting point guard?
I think so. Yeah. I think so just because, I mean, the dude was participating in the G League events as well.
Right.
Right. This is a guy who was dipping his toe in the NBA waters, obviously came back, but he's got that certain something about him. It's the experience, like you said. He's one of the old heads on the team, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that is a huge benefit to have on the court when you can sort of have a floor general. It'll be interesting to see how he assimilates with the team, but, I would pencil him in as a starter right now for sure.
I mean, a guy like that is invaluable when you think that maybe, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that at some point you could have, let's say, Kobe Buffkin, Caleb Houston, Moussa Diabate, and a sophomore and Hunter Dickinson on the floor, and then you've got this fifth-year senior grinder who's seen it all, been through it all, just a calming presence. You don't know how the lineups are going to look or what the rotations are going to be like, who's going to get what minutes, but that's a very realistic a 5 on the floor right there.
Yeah.
I mean, or you throw Zeb Jackson in at the 2, or maybe Frankie Collins bumps out to the 2. I mean, you don't know exactly how it's going to look, but there's some youth and some talent there that can be really settled down by guards like Devontae Jones and Eli Brooks. I mean, it's huge to have two guys like that who you think are going to get, I think the bulk of the minutes, but man, you throw Frankie Collins out there and suddenly he's just a whiz and he's flying up and down the court and yamming on people's heads, and you're like, all right, he's going to get some minutes, and now maybe Devontae Jones steps back a little bit, but I think he's the starter. I mean, at least out of the gate, and then you see how the rotations work throughout the rest of the year, and you see how some of those young guys look. I mean, Zeb Jackson just a sophomore, Frankie Collins a freshman, Kobe Buffkin a freshman. So, man, you can't not smile. You can't not smile when you think about how good they could be. You hope they stay healthy. Obviously, Michigan ran into that a little bit last year with Isaiah Livers, but still had a deep tournament run. I mean, this team is poised to do some really, really good things. I know there's a lot of people saying that, Michigan's not really close to the favorite in the Big Ten, and I don't know how you can think that. I really don't. I mean, they'd be my pick as defending champs, and what they got coming back in the, yes, losing two really, really good players like Franz Wagner and Isaiah Livers is a big deal, but a better version of Hunter Dickinson, a better version of Brandon Johns, maybe a better version of Eli Brooks. I mean, you feel like he's maybe close to the ceiling, but he's so good. He's so good on both ends of the floor. Man, it's exciting, man.
Nothing to complain about, that's for sure.
Nothing to complain about. Juwan must just be... I could just picture him like sitting in the pool today somewhere, like with a stogie.
Smoking a cigar,
yeah, dude, just living the dream, man. thinking about what he's got to work with, and yeah, man, I'm excited about that unit. I mean, I don't know. Where was your head at when you started realizing that, like, tomorrow is the deadline and Hunter Dickinson was going to have to make a decision? I know there were some people who were worried about some tweet that Jace Howard put out there and assumed it was about Dickinson. And I don't know. What were you thinking going into today and tomorrow, I guess?
I mean, from the second he entered his name, I just always assumed he was coming back. I mean, if you watched him play, if you've paid close attention to their season and kind of what his game was like, you could tell that he was obviously extremely talented, but there are things that he's got to work on. And we've talked about before, does his game translate well to the NBA and how the big men in today's NBA perform? And I think that there's, his outside game could use some work, being able to use his right hand could use some work. There's some things that he can spend the next year developing that I think will really turn him into a great pro. And so for those reasons, I always thought he was coming back. But you start to get this close to the deadline and you're like, okay, well, you're not sure.
And we talked about it before. I mean, all it takes is one team to say, like, I see something with this kid. Right. I think he's the centerpiece. I think we need him. That message gets relayed to said player, and they stay in the draft. I mean, it happens. It does happen. I always thought that coming back was the best move for him. I mean, selfishly, Michigan fans wanted him back, but, like, he didn't show that he can step out and shoot the outside jumper very well. He went to his strong hand 90% of the time, probably, maybe more. I mean, he's still not as physically strong as he would need to be in the NBA. So there's things to work on. I mean, he's an extremely talented and effective player in the Big Ten, but the NBA is a different animal. And maybe he could have taken a gamble and stayed in the draft and gotten picked. But I think what you just said is right, and some of the things that we saw him working on in his social media posts where he's putting up 3-pointers and going both hands and putting it on the deck a little bit more. All that stuff is much more prevalent in the NBA out of its bigs.
And you really got to wonder, how much does the NIL stuff factor into that decision? Probably not a lot, but I'm sure that there's a part of it. Like a guy like Dickinson is highly marketable, and I'm sure that there's not this everybody comes from a different background, but some guys are trying to get to the league, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, because financially, there's a lot of people depending on that happening and being able to provide for their family. So I think this NIL stuff definitely takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw a couple of questions up here just because this is so pertinent to what we're talking about. I know we kind of do questions at the end sometimes, but I kind of addressed this a little bit. For me, day one, right out of the gate, I'm going Devontae Jones, Eli Brooks, Caleb Houston, Brandon Johns Jr., Hunter Dickinson. That's my starting five.
Solid five, yeah.
That's my starting five out of the gate. I mean, could you play with that a little bit at the 1 and the 2? I mean, do you bump Eli Brooks over to the 1 and give one of these young freshmen a look at the 2, or do you give Diabate a chance to get going out there with some size and length over Brandon Johns? I mean, you've got some movable pieces, but I think that's where I would go. First game. I mean, I haven't seen these guys. It's not like we've seen any of them do anything in the Michigan uniform yet. These freshmen, Caleb Houston and Diabate especially. But that's where I would go. So continue to throw up a couple of these points here. Purdue is viewed kind of as the early favorite. I'll admit I don't really know a lot about what Purdue has coming back in terms of why they're considered the odds-on favorite, but. Yeah, I've seen that. Ohio State's there. I know E.J. Liddell just announced that he's going to be back. I believe Dwayne Washington is staying in the draft, though, so he's gone. But yeah, I mean, the Big Ten was loaded last year. It's going to be really good again this year.
Right.
But I think Michigan State should be better. Michigan's going to be in that mix, and I think they need to be in the discussion. I just haven't seen a lot of people picking Michigan to win it. I think they've been kind of overlooked a little bit, and they did lose a lot. I mean, I'm not saying it's crazy or that the criticism is completely unwarranted, but I think they've just got a lot of talent coming in. I don't know how you couldn't have faith in Juwan Howard and what his staff does.
That's a huge part of it. You take a look at the roster and all the talent they have, but then by the way, they've also got Juwan Howard leading the group, and I think adding that into the equation, that to me they're the runaway favorite.
So this is. I don't think Kofi Coburn coming to Michigan and he's gonna what? He's gonna back up Hunter Dickinson, or they're gonna play Twin Towers, or then you put Dickinson on the bench. This is one of those crazy examples where it just isn't a fit. I mean, like, as good as he is, and the dude is an absolute monster. I mean, he is just a man.
Yeah.
I just don't know how it works. Like, because we haven't, he's not an outside shooter. Like, he's 2 feet in the paint, turn around, dunking on somebody's head. So that's where he is. With Dickinson not showing and not having the experience of stepping out and being a pick and pop guy, or a stretch 5 isn't even really a thing, in college basketball as much, but a stretch 4 with Coburn at the 5, I just don't know how that works.
Yeah. And plus, screw anybody from Illinois after the way things went down last year. We don't want him. He can go elsewhere. We're totally fine over here in Ann Arbor.
How about that though too? Like, the Illinois basketball team, who is just bumping their gums about being the best team in the Big Ten. They should have been. They should have been the regular season champ, and now
shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, now Io DeSune was off to the pros, and Coburn is like, peace out, Champaign, I'm gone.
Right, yeah.
Cool, man. Hope that was a good real run for you, because it's going to be back to mediocrity probably next year, I would guess. Their other top scorer, I think, left too. What's his name? Is it Adam Jones? The dude, he had blonde braids.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. He was a big time freshman scorer for them too, and he left. So they're going to be way down. At least on paper, it doesn't look very good.
There's always football season.
Yeah. Good luck. Yeah, good luck, Illinois. Bert Bielema back in action on the sidelines. He was our champion beer drinker last week when we talked about that, wasn't he?
Guy can put him down.
Certainly looks like it. He's putting something down. That's for sure. Not sure exactly what it is, but he's putting something down. Yeah. All right, a couple of good news tidbits on the recruiting trail for Michigan football as well. 2 days ago, Michigan landed Colston Loveland, the number 1 player in the state of Idaho. Not exactly your football hotbed talent area, but I like the kid on tape, and he is the number 1 player in the state there, and he had some pretty solid offers. And then yesterday, Michigan picked up a commitment from Mario Eugenio, kind of speed edge hybrid rush type guy from down in Florida. So I actually like both of these pickups. I like the Eugenio pickup a little bit more. Yeah. And just over the last couple of days, I got to learn a little bit more about this kid. First of all, he's from the Dominican Republic, and he's only been in the United States since like his middle school age. So there was some language barrier stuff and some lack of football knowledge stuff that really kind of kept him off the radar for a while and made teams pause a little bit. Like, we don't really know what to expect with this kid. Communication's been a little tricky. He hasn't played a lot of football before. He's not even that familiar with the game. But he had some pretty nice offers as well, and I think this is a pretty big pickup for Michigan. So over the last month and 6 days now, Michigan has landed seven kids. They landed 5 in the month of June, and now 2 in July. And while it's always good to have some momentum, and you always like to see commitments, they haven't got any real big fish. And right. I think you can be honest with yourself and look at it that way. I mean, we talked about the run that they had in June and where some of those guys were ranked. The 3-star running back C.J. Stokes, and the kid from Belleville, Aaron Alexander, the quarterback, Jaden Denegal, who came in, worked out, got offered, and committed on the spot. I mean, like, that's not a top target guy that Michigan was going for years in some cases when you recruit the top level guys and really try to get your number 1 target. Right. But I like Loveland and Eugenio both quite a bit. I mean, with tight ends, they're never ranked that high. They just aren't. I mean, once in a while you'll get a guy who's an absolute blue chipper and looks like a canvas.
Did I see him playing defensive back in some of his highlight film?
He kind of played like linebacker, and I think
did some hybrid.
Yeah, did some drop stuff in coverage a little bit. So he's a good athlete.
Right.
He's a former wide receiver, so he's kind of got that wide receiver DNA in terms of like running routes and high pointing the ball and becoming a runner after the catch. He's really good in all those areas. I mean, you're not going to convince anybody that he's playing against top-tier talent out in Idaho, so that's something you got to take into account. And that's also an area where a lot of schools aren't even going to bother recruiting. They're just not going to, they're not going to spend the time, the effort, the resources to go up there and get a kid from Idaho. So while his offer list wasn't like swollen with all of the big boys, he had some nice offers, and I think this is a good get for Michigan, and kind of the same deal, different reasons, but kind of the same deal for Eugenio. Obviously, he's down in Florida. That's a hotbed of recruiting talent. Every program in the country spends time trying to get kids out of there, but there were reasons why he didn't have the high end offers. He had 30 plus.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Oregon was like his other biggest offer, but some of the big time Florida schools weren't that interested. But I really like this kid on tape. He's a motor guy. He's an athlete. He's flexible. He can do a little bit of everything. I mean, he played running back a little bit in high school. I mean, he wears number 24, and he's carrying the ball and scoring long touchdowns. And You can see the wiggle, you can see the athleticism, you can see the burst. So I like both of these commitments, I think, more than just about all of them in June. And I guess big picture, it's just, God, it's hard to ignore what's going on in Columbus, man, when they're doing what they're doing, and then Michigan's getting guys like this. But you gotta find value where you can find it, and I think there's some real value in these last two guys, Loveland and Eugenio.
There's no question about it, and we've talked about this a number of times that, Michigan is bringing in solid talent, especially when you consider the track record over the last 2 decades and how long it's been since they have been, since they've won a conference title, and they're hardly ever in the discussion for the college football playoff. And so it's, they're getting the guys that they're able to get with what they're producing on the field. And that's, you'll have the Will Johnsons and the Jabril Peppers and the Rashawn Garys every now and then, but you're right. You look down at Columbus and you see what they're doing, and you're like, shit, are we recruiting at the level where we're going to be able to get over the hump and get to where we want to be? And unfortunately, Michigan's just going to have to find a way to put it together with the guys they're able to get if they want to be able to recruit at that level. It's not going to happen until they do it on the field. And that's why this upcoming season, you've got a new staff in place. You've got a lot of assistant coaches there that I think you and I are very high on. But it's just got to come together on the football field. And they don't have to go out and be a playoff team in year one under this new regime, under this new group of assistants, I should say, because Harbaugh's still ultimately running the show. But they have to look like they belong on the field. They have to look like a group that knows what they're doing and has, like, a goal. They've got to have an identity, an offensive identity. Like, all these things they've got to show in order to get to where they want to go. So am I super excited about, these commitments? No, but and I would be lying if I said I was. I'm glad that they're committed to Michigan, and I hope that they become everything that the coaching staff, envisions they can become. But at the end of the day, they've just got to do it on the field. I'm glad Michigan's bringing in guys, but man, Columbus is just on fire right now.
Ohio State has commitments in place from 5 of the top 10 players in 2021.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented. It's like Alabama hasn't done that. Clemson hasn't done that. LSU hasn't done that. Georgia hasn't done that. There's been, a couple of the top 10 guys will go to the same school just about every year, but 50% of the top 10 players are going to be at Ohio State. They just picked up the commitment from JT Tuimoloau, or I don't know how to say his last name. I probably butchered that, but number 1 player in 2021, and they've got a commitment in place from the number 1 player in 2022 in quarterback Quinn Ewers. I mean, like, they are just on a roll right now that you can't compete with like this. Yep. Like something you got to break through. Dude, hell of a lot easier said than done. But you've got to start finding a way to do what you just said, to have more high-level success on the field that's going to get the attention of these kids that you need to get to have then more. It's like I've said this 100 times before. It's like you need talent to win. You got to win to get talent. Like somewhere you've got to be able to disrupt that cycle and break through because of your scheme, or you just get lucky and you hit the jackpot on an under-the-radar guy that turns out to be an All-American, or like you said, absolutely capitalize on the guys that you do get that are top-flight recruits, because they do come through. And it's not like Michigan's not recruiting like Wake Forest. I mean, they're recruiting at a high level. Have they used those high-level recruits very well? I would argue that they haven't. And that's part of why they've recruited the second best in the Big Ten. I mean, Penn State's in the discussion too, but the second best recruiting classes every year in the Big Ten, and they're not even in the discussion of being the second best team in the Big Ten.
Right. Or you know what else you do, Brandon? And I'm sure we're probably going to talk about this a little bit later in the podcast, but you put together something really special and really unique, and you flex your muscle with the NIL stuff.
Oh, baby. I'm going to click it right now.
If you're the University of Michigan, this is how you bridge that gap, right? Because you look at what Ohio State is doing, and obviously they're killing it on the football field, and you're not quite there yet. So if you're the University of Michigan, what the hell can you possibly do to bring in these top flight recruits that, they want to be in the spotlight?
I'm getting centered here because I'm about to go on a rant.
I'm going to pass it over to you. I know that you have a very strong opinion on this, and I think this was a good lead into the NIL stuff.
Here's the deal. That's exactly what I was going to say. You know how you flip the script and you change all this around and you work it into your favor? It's through the NIL stuff that's coming down the pike right now. I think Michigan dropped the ball out of the gate. I've talked to a lot of people who are in the know, athletes at Michigan, not just football players either, athletes at Michigan. I've gotten word from some different boosters and different alumni people who said they wanted to be more involved and there really wasn't a way to be involved. That's not good. That all should have been in place on July 1st when it rolled out and when it became live. With that said, it doesn't even matter. It really doesn't even matter because Michigan can absolutely still crush this thing and hit a grand slam with the kind of power, money, and resources that they have out there in the world. I put a tweet up about this. I don't know if you saw it or not, Chris. I'll refer to it specifically. Michigan has almost 2,000 alumni who are considered ultra high net worth people. That means they have a net worth of more than $30 million. Okay. Almost 2,000 of them. That's like on the list that I looked at, it was actually only number 18 on the list because of schools like MIT and Princeton and Harvard and Yale. In terms of Power 5, Michigan is only behind, I think, one or two other schools, Cal, Berkeley, and Stanford. That was it. Now there are some schools I think that have more ultra high net worth alumni, but in terms of total value, Michigan, this is this number, dude. Those people who are ultra high net worth alumni for Michigan, it's like 1,972 people or something like that, almost 2,000. Their total net worth is $691 billion with a B. Okay? Yeah. That's more than every Power 5 school in the country except for Stanford and Cal. And what do Stanford and Cal not have that Michigan has? Good football and a tradition of good football and a level of success that they just don't have it. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't also use this resource and turn it into something extremely valuable. I think they can and they should, and hopefully there's people working on it for every school. I mean, look, every school has rich alumni and money. So they all need to be putting something like this into place. But earlier today, a story came out about how Miami is doing exactly this. Miami has gotten enough donors together. It might just be, I think it's headlined by one or two guys, but if this is the point I was going to get into, and I'll come back to it in a minute, they're able to now basically put a sponsorship out there that every single player on Miami's roster is going to get $6,000. Like, that's $540,000. That's like pennies to these boosters. Stephen Ross has given $500 million to the university, and not mostly, but a large chunk of that to athletics. Yeah. You know, Al Glick is a steel magnate. He's really, really elderly, but he's given a ton of money. I mean, there's a reason why the practice facility is named the Al Glick Fieldhouse. Like, Michigan has some very, very powerful, wealthy, rich people who could get on board and create a fund that is turned into a service or a sponsorship from. This doesn't have anything to do with Michigan. I saw people on Twitter saying, that's against the rules, man. Michigan can't be involved. No, Michigan doesn't have to be involved at all. I think these dudes that are worth like $100 million or $300 million or $1.7 billion are pretty smart guys. They probably can read for about 2 seconds and find out, like, all right, Michigan can't be involved, but we can do this. We can set something up. There needs to be, and I talked to a buddy of mine who's as smart as anybody I've ever known in my life. Graduated high school early, went to Michigan State for his undergrad, got his PhD at Michigan by the time he was like 22. He's now the COO of a NASDAQ-traded company. Yeah, I'm name-dropping a little bit. I don't care. He's a smart dude. He told me on the phone that he could have a meeting with Stephen Ross by the end of the week if he wanted to. Like, this dude is a dude, man. He's a dude. And he told me, he just broke down so many things about how Michigan needs to be handling this and what they need to be doing. And basically his overall message is that, and this is not meant to be like a shot at what the players are doing or how they're trying to get theirs. More power to them. I hope they kill it. I hope they have a ton of success chasing whatever they want to chase. But this isn't about the players. Like, that's peanuts compared to this. Needs to be about the big money boosters and the donors getting together and creating an organization, a fund, a program where everybody can eat. Like, I hope Aiden Hutchinson sells 1,000 T-shirts with his number on it. I hope he does. But that's a drop in the bucket about what this NIL stuff could and should be for a place like Michigan. Again, I'm not trying to take a shot at the athletes, but like, Michigan fans and like boosters and donors, they don't really care about the individual players. And you know that because it's a rotating door. It's every 2 or 3 years you've got new guys. It's like we've talked about before. I don't think a lot of Michigan fans are beating down the door and chasing after former Michigan players to watch them in the NFL. I mean, like, you got a soft spot for him. Like, you hope Jake Butt makes it with the Bears and then he sticks it out. You wish Denard would have got a better shot and would have been in the league still. You love that Tom Brady's won all the Super Bowls, but like, they care about Michigan football. And it doesn't really matter who's there at that time. So what you need to find is a smart business person who's got a lot of money. Stephen Ross would be like the ideal person because he's the one who's given the most money and cares a ton about athletics. Because I also saw somebody say like, well, yeah, there's a lot of people, but they're nerdy computer guys. They don't care about football. No, but they care about their university and they care about putting money into something that they believe in. And if you could have a guy run the whole thing. If you have Stephen Ross running something like this and he gets on the phone with another billionaire who doesn't really care that much about football but says, like, we're doing something great. You want to talk about leaders in best? Let's be leaders in best at this thing that you can dump, I mean, $100,000 into. Like that, again, that's nothing for these multimillionaire guys. But if you get 20, 30, 50, 80, 100 of them to do that, and then you've got this fund that somebody can be in control with and can funnel that money out to not just one or two high price, high profile guys, but everybody in the program, then you get everybody in the country looking at Michigan to say, dude, I don't even have to freaking play and I can go there and make $20,000 riding pine. Yeah. I can be a true freshman sitting on the bench, lifting weights, eating a steak after big wins and make $25,000. I don't even have to set foot on the field. You're going to get kids that you could never touch before.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. You don't even have to freaking talk to them because that's enough. You can't pay kids to come to Michigan. You can't pay, but like, bro, if you know that Michigan is giving $50,000 to every player on the roster per year, you don't have to say shit.
Right.
Like, that is going to be a known thing. There's going to be articles written about it. Like Miami today, like, it was only $6,000. Like, I mean, not only $6,000. Like, that's a decent chunk of money for anybody, especially for a college kid. You know, it's like, I think what is that, $500 a month, right?
Yeah.
If that number is going to be higher at other places, and it's going to continue to go higher as more people figure this out. I'm nobody. I'm sitting in my basement on a video right now, and I'm starting to figure this thing out. Like, where, and maybe I hope that somebody is doing this with Michigan's best interest in mind, where they can start to put a program in place. And the problem, the crazy thing about this is that it's allowed. Like, this isn't shady. This isn't seedy in any way. In any way. I mean, are things going to change down the line as NIL is around a little bit longer? Sure. But you're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube on this, man. This is out here. This is here to stay. And you're going to be grandfathered in. Like, if down the line they say that, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, LSU is letting their players use the LSU name and logo. The school has determined that that's fine. They're allowing that. They think that's better for the school, that's better for the brand, and it's certainly better for the kids. Dude, like, if Michigan would get on board with something like that and let them use the Block M and let them use Michigan and let them use the Big House, and like LSU is even letting them use facilities in, you know, whether it's an appearance or whether it's a commercial or it's this or it's that or it's product placement or it's whatever, they're letting them use all of that stuff as long as it's approved and there's no compliance rules, you know, being broken. But like, dude, all this stuff is such a gray area right now, and there's so much stuff moving around that it's all allowed right now. It is. And you're not going to get in trouble for something that you do now while it's allowed down the line. You're going to be grandfathered in under what the rule was at the time. I think it could change, but I honestly don't think it's going to. I don't think they're going to take things away. Like I said, it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube once it's out there. They might cap it, but like, they're not going to suddenly say like, oh, those things that were okay before, they're just gone now. That's not going to happen. And again, this is all on the up and up. There is nothing. What Miami did, what these players are, it's all promoted now. That's all part of what NIL was supposed to be for. This is exactly what it was designed for and exactly how the players are supposed to utilize it. And again, I hope Aiden Hutchinson sells 1 million t-shirts, man, but he's not going to. The boosters need to come forward and put something in place like we saw down in Miami, where $540,000 is going to be given and divvied up among 90 football players to get $6,000 apiece.
Yeah.
Like, that's, dude, $500,000 ain't nothing to these people. If you get it's not nothing to one person, but if you get, like I said, 50 or 100 of them to come together and throw money into a fund that can then be allocated out to the players in a way that's all in compliance with NIL because it's for a service or a sponsorship or an appearance, dude, The floodgates are opening. This is Michigan's freaking magic bullet, dude. This is the magic carpet. This is the unicorn. This is the magic wand. This is how the playing field is leveled, and this is how Michigan can actually surpass just about every program in the country.
Well, I'm wondering. I'm thinking as you're kind of running through this list of how easy it would be. You get this group of people together. We do know that there is a large group of people that aren't fans of the NIL stuff. They think that the scholarship is enough. I wonder, you mentioned a guy like Stephen Ross or some of these other donors that are in a position to do something like this. I wonder what their personal stance is on the NIL stuff, because you're right. In a perfect world, I would have assumed that the University of Michigan would have something big to roll out at midnight the day that this thing went live, right? We've got this, X in place, or we've got, they've got a name for it, or whatever the case is. It's something that you would have hoped they would have been working on for the last year, maybe even 2 years, because everybody knew that this was coming. You weren't quite sure when the trigger was going to be pulled, but you knew it was coming. And then it happens, and you and I, have these conversations with people who are plugged in and would know, and you almost get the sense that people, the players, athletes, whatever, they're not really sure what's coming. That Michigan or some people within Michigan are almost creating red tape where red tape doesn't need to exist. Like you don't want. You're right. This is Michigan's magic bullet. This is a golden opportunity. And the one thing you don't want to see is the University of Michigan making it harder or more difficult for guys to compete, or even worse, just not giving them the tools they need to be as successful as they can be within this new market. So you're right. We talk about what's happening down in Columbus, and they are a recruiting machine, and they are a juggernaut, and they're a roadblock that's not going anywhere. And Michigan is never going to break through until they get through Ohio State. Like, that is the roadblock. So this is a way that they can bridge the gap, but based on everything we've heard, it is a little bit concerning that there just isn't more in place, or that Michigan really hasn't flexed its muscles so far. That isn't to say that all the things you're talking about right now aren't happening behind the scenes,
sure,
and that something big is coming, but you would have hoped whatever that big thing is would already be out there, and that Michigan would already be kicking ass while other people are still trying to put it together. And it doesn't seem like that happened here.
Yeah, I mean, this really could. I mean, it's going to be a game changer. You're going to see, like, I'm trying to think of some of the other schools that were on that list. Like I said, USC had more super ultra high net worth people than Michigan. So did I think Notre Dame. I think Northwestern, Stanford, Cal. I said those two. Texas is up there as well, but Michigan. That number, that $691 billion is as high as anybody in the country in terms of Power 5. Like I said, dude, number one on the list was it Harvard, I think? They had like 4,800 billion. Like it's like another, it's insane.
Right.
But again, like when you throw in all the boxes that Michigan can check, football, brand, reach, alumni base, that net worth, the uber wealthy and rich, nobody's touching Michigan. Like I really think there's like 4 schools, maybe 3. I think it's 4. I think it's Michigan, I think it's Texas, I think it's USC, and I think it's Notre Dame. I think that's it. Like, Alabama's got some rich people, and they certainly have more on the football side of things. Clemson, same thing. Georgia, same thing. But in terms of checking all of the different boxes at the highest level, Michigan is freaking elite in all of them, dude. And they need to use that and leverage that and capitalize on this NIL thing, and that could really be the game changer and the difference maker that Michigan fans have been pining for. Like, gone are the days about like, well, Michigan just doesn't cheat, that's why they can't, or well, Michigan's in Michigan, it's not the South, they don't have as much dude. Nuts to all that. Like, this is an equalizer. This can absolutely be an equalizer if it's done correctly. I don't love it. I don't love it. I think, like we talked about before, I think it definitely should be. I hated the idea that like a kid couldn't sign his autograph and get some money for it. That seemed insane to me. Now, this side of it, though, where you're starting to get like an organization put in place that's going to pay every single kid on the roster, and technically it's not like the University of Miami doing it, but You're insane if you don't think that people at Miami kind of helped harbor and facilitate this thing. But they really don't have to. That's the thing. Like, if you get enough smart people on board to just do the work and get involved, U of M doesn't have to have anything to do with it. They can't, and they can't, like, on paper they can't be officially in bed with these deals, or they can't set up anything. They can't bring people together, like, but they can make it easier than what they are right now, based on everything we've learned and heard about from people who are involved in it.
I think the bottom line is this NIL stuff, like, it's much bigger than a football player going to a car dealership and signing autographs, or some, or one of the athletes saying, "Oh, I'm, trying to start a clothing brand," which is all but impossible. Like, that's not where the NIL stuff is really going to benefit these athletes. It's going to come from the University of Michigan using its alumni base and the donors to really create something unique and special that is unique to the University of Michigan, that 99% of the other institutions just can't offer, a potential athlete that would go there. So you're right. It sucks that it hasn't come out yet, or that we don't know about it, or that it hasn't been advertised. It doesn't mean that they're not doing it, but you would have hoped that. I mean, shit, when this thing went live, on the day it went live, it was unreal with, all of these student athletes. There's gaming partnerships, and they're coming out with their own logos and their own clothing and yada yada yada, and it was a crazy day one. But for me personally, I didn't see the type of thing you would want to see from, people at the University of Michigan, or from athletes at the University of Michigan, for having something big behind them, sort of pushing them out there and helping them succeed.
Absolutely. So I'm going to read this real quick, just in case you hadn't seen it clearly, and I'm sure a lot of people out there haven't seen it. This deal with Miami, and kind of how this works and how it came together, and to give you an idea of how Michigan could do this exact same type of thing. And now let me clarify. There are some different laws in place in the state of Florida versus the state of Michigan, but as far as I know, that means is that the university is kind of in charge of coming up with some of what they allow and what they don't allow at this point. And again, it comes back to then allow it. Just allow it right now while you can. And then if it gets taken away, or it gets changed or modified, or redacted later on, then so be it. But right now, per the NCAA and the NIL rules, like, you can do these things. So this is from the Miami Rivals site. American Top Team, one of the nation's top training academies for MMA fighters, which has 44 gyms throughout South Florida and the world, has finalized plans to offer name, image, and likeness contracts to every University of Miami scholarship football player. So that is specified among scholarship players, which each school has 85 of them. This says 90, but there's an 85 scholarship player limit. Maybe it's a little different right now until the season starts. But anyway, so it says each of the 90 existing Miami scholarship players will be offered $500 a month, $6,000 a year, to endorse American Top Team through their social media accounts. That's all they got to do. Put on a shirt, American Top Team, best gyms in Florida. Boom, $500. That's it, man. That's freaking it. That doesn't have to have anything to do with the University of Miami. It doesn't have to have anything to do with why they're doing what they're doing on the football field, or anything with the coaches or the like, nothing. It's an investment for $540,000 for that gym. Yeah. The deal is being administered by the marketing company Bring Back the U. There you go. There's a marketing company out there called Bring Back the U, which I'm shocked. A South Florida businessman named Dan Lambert founded it, and is a huge Miami Hurricane fan. He might not even be a freaking alumni. He just likes the Hurricanes. Dude, there's the blueprint. It's happening. It's already happening. So, like, Michigan, Stephen Ross, or whoever, like you said, maybe there's a bunch of people that aren't into this NIL thing and they think it's crap, but you've got 2,000 people worth more than $30 million. I'm willing to bet you could wrangle up a few to get involved and create something called, like, Blue Boost or something, or Go Blue and Beyond, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Put some kitschy name on it, dump some freaking money into it, and get these freaking kids paid, and it'll start taking Michigan to a new level that they have not been able to get to. Like, I'm not that smart. I think I'm a pretty intelligent guy, but I'm not as smart as those people. Like, it's there, dude. It's there for the taking. It just needs to be done. I hope it is. I hope it's in the works. I hope before the season starts we see some massive program rollout that involves Michigan donors and boosters that's going to get every scholarship athlete on the team paid. And then it could branch off to other sports too. Obviously, this is not just about football, but football butters the bread, man. Michigan football puts 115,000, 110,000 people in the seats every Saturday and essentially funds the entire athletic department. So even though it's about everybody who's playing sports at Michigan, you got to take care of what you got to take care of, and that's where it starts. And I mean, that's, there's big boosters aren't dumping $100 million into the wrestling team, dude. They're just not. I mean, it is what it is. Michigan football pays the bills, and so that's where you've got to start, and that's where you've got to get this thing off the ground. It doesn't even sound that difficult to me in terms of business
not unless
things.
you make it more difficult than it needs to be.
It really doesn't sound that difficult to me. So why isn't there an organization called Go Blue and Beyond, where people are dumping money into it and they can partner with local businesses to sponsor those athletes every year? I mean, pick any random business in Michigan. Pick any random business in Ann Arbor. It doesn't even. That's a pretty big company. They've got 44 gyms around Florida and around the world. Right. It doesn't even have to be that big. The money's not coming from them. The money's coming from the boosters. So I don't know, some booster out there who's worth $1.2 billion. It's got a favorite restaurant in Ann Arbor. Link up with them, slap some freaking T-shirts on the players, and give them $10,000.
There you go.
Done, dude. It's done.
I have nothing to add, man. I honestly I don't know. Like, it seems so simple. It just seems like this is something that should have been in place, or these things should have been in place for these guys to take advantage of. And yeah, damn it. I don't know why it has to be this way. Michigan should be on the front line of this thing, like showing everybody else how it's done, because they've got that kind of power.
Well,
and you hate to be, I don't know, you hate to see it.
One U of M is taking off and kicking ass with this thing, but it ain't Michigan. It's Miami, because now we've seen De'Aaron King come out and talk about how Miami prepared him for 8 weeks, and he was one of the first big-name athletes to sign. I think he made like $50,000 or $80,000 on that first day in endorsement deals through different companies and ventures throughout Florida, and now we see Miami doing something like this Bring Back the U program funded by wealthy business owners and donors, all designed to give money to Miami football players.
I mean, dude, I told you about Masterpiece Kid, right? He plays Tennessee State or whatever, signed a $2 million deal.
Incoming freshman basketball player,
Think about this. An incoming freshman signed a $2 million deal with a tech company. And now, granted, that's not going to be the norm for most college athletes, but it just goes to show you what's possible right now, what's open right now. And if you can take advantage of these things, take advantage of them. I mean, I don't know if it's Tennessee State, but if somebody just got word that a kid going to Tennessee State, an incoming freshman, just got a $2 million deal, I'm probably trying to figure out what's going on at Tennessee State and how the hell did that happen.
Exactly.
So like you said, there's no telling what type of rules or regulations they're going to slap on this thing down the road, depending on how out of control it gets, or you're going to run into some unintended consequences for sure, just like you did with the college football playoff doing 4 teams, right? The unintended consequence was that it's the same 4 teams every single year, and it's really killing recruiting, so they're going to open that up. You'll probably see some things happen like that with the NIL stuff, but right now it's fresh, it's hot, you've got all the opportunity in the world. Like, just take advantage of it, get these guys paid, and try to bridge the gap with some of the bigger programs when you clearly are struggling to do it on the field. This is one way to do it off the field.
I'm going to throw it up there. I sold him on NIL.
There you go.
I sold him on it. No, I'm putting that up to joke a little bit. Like I said, I'm not out there doing this. I don't have the kind of money to do something like this. But all it took was a little conversation with somebody who I know is really smart and has dealt with the tech world and the business world and has some money and has done some investing. And oh, by the way, happens to have a PhD from Michigan. And we kind of started spitballing some of this stuff, and then I dove into the numbers a little bit today to find out just how many wealthy alumni out there that have billions and billions of dollars of net value that went to Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You're either gonna get right or you're gonna get left, dude. That's what it is. That's what it is. You got to figure this thing out, and Michigan is absolutely poised to kill this.
I mean, is there any
on the
question,
highest level?
Is there any question that Michigan is sitting in a much better place with a guy like Walter Nolan if they've got some sort of like NIL program just humming along? Like a guy like that who may not come to Michigan otherwise, like that's how you get these recruits in the door, man. You've got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I've heard that Michigan had a presentation for those official visitors, Walter Nolan and Justice Finkley and Austin Brown, Will Johnson. I'm trying to think of who was all in on that big visit weekend. Joshua Josephs, Joseph Adedire. There were Eugenio was one of them. There were a lot of guys. I think there was like 18 or 20 guys on an official visit that weekend in June. And they had a presentation for them about NIL. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't see it. I wasn't allowed to see what that looked like. I don't know exactly what the details were of it, but a lot of people said that they came away pretty impressed. A few days later, several of those guys are not even considering Michigan anymore. So I don't know what it said. I don't know what would lead, like guys who are clearly on Michigan's wish list and clearly high on them. Justice Finkley comes out with the top 3. Michigan's not in it. Austin Brown commits to Wisconsin. It's Walter Nolan. I don't think he's coming to Michigan, man. But I mean, Michigan's poised itself to do well. But like you said, maybe that would be the tipping point to get a guy like that.
Right.
In years past, it's been. I wonder how much this is going to change with the top guys, because I wonder if those guys are still going to get bags full of money like that. I mean, that's happened. I mean, you're just a dunce cap if you don't think that's going on at some places. But now that you can do it legally, you just find creative ways to do it above board. Like, hey, we're going to give Walter Nolan $500,000, but it's going to be an endorsement deal through, pick your random business in the state of Michigan that one of the wealthiest boosters wants to support.
Right.
And then Walter Nolan then has to spend his entire Michigan career wearing a Zingerman's hat. I don't know, whatever the hell it is. I mean, you get creative with it however you want to. It doesn't have to be something like that. But the point is, like, there's going to be ways to do that above board now. And I do find myself wondering, like, okay, say a school is gonna publicize that Walter Nolan's getting $250,000, but he's also going to get a baggie full of $300,000.
Right.
I don't know, and I'm just using him as an example. From all I understand, he's a good kid, and he might not be on the take. I'm just using him as an example because he's Michigan's biggest target right now.
Right.
So I wonder about that. I mean, to me, you can start to bring in a higher level of talent across the board, because not every kid was getting paid to go to school, but now they can. Essentially, like, every kid can be like, dude, if I go to Michigan, even if I don't play a minute, I'm redshirted. I don't even have a chance to play. The coaches tell me I'm not playing as a freshman. I still make $25,000 just because I'm there, because of this endorsement deal that's put in place. I don't know, man. That's pretty powerful if you ask me.
Good recruiting tool.
It's a massive recruiting tool, and it needs to be used that way. Again, haven't heard that it is, doesn't mean that it isn't. I just think, like, when you see other schools doing it and it's already in place and being announced and being publicly discussed, and you're not one of them, then you're behind. You're behind.
Heaven forbid those folks down in Columbus get this thing figured out and humming. I mean, those big time programs, they're going to start to take advantage of this stuff, and you can't be behind the 8 ball. Like, you got to be proactive. This should have been something that was in the works a year, maybe even 2 years back. Like, you knew it was coming. There was whispers about it. It's really the only way for Michigan to get to break through and to bring in those players that you constantly see Ohio State signing.
Maybe that's why Gene Smith has been meeting with some of the most wealthy boosters at Ohio State.
Could be
interesting. I wonder if Ward Manuel's having any of those meetings.
Where is he?
Man, he's probably golfing or something. I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, taking a couple shots there, but dude, it's
only because we want the Michigan football program to do well.
It's two things. It's what you just said. It's because we want that. We want Michigan to step into this and kill it and crush it and do better on the football field and across all sports. But 2, it's because they can. They can do such a good job with this. They could do better with this than just about every school in the country. That is a fact. That's not hyperbole. That's looking at the numbers. That's looking at how many wealthy people you have with a Michigan degree and how much money has been given by some of those boosters already in the past. This is the new wave. Shifted a little bit. Instead of putting a damn flat screen in every locker, dump some money into this fund and get these kids paid and bring the best players to Michigan legally. 100% legally. It's all there for you. Just got to grab it. Just got to grab the bull by the horns, man. If somebody can, please do it. If you can't, I'll try. I didn't go to Michigan, but I think I could. I'm starting to figure out how this thing could work a little bit.
You've tried.
I don't know. I don't know, man. I just, like I said, over the last few days, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been doing some reading on what different schools are doing. Brooks Austin, who runs the Georgia site for Sports Illustrated, has put up some really good things. He actually outlined Michigan as one of the schools who should benefit from this the most. He doesn't give a shit about Michigan. He doesn't have a dog in the fight, but he outlined Michigan specifically as one of the schools who should capitalize on this the most because of these ultra high net worth people and the overall value and the way that money has been thrown around at Michigan before involving athletics. It's there, man. It is all there. It is like if you know Scarface, there's a line in that movie. I can't say it on this broadcast, but it has to do with, it's like something just waiting to be something, and you just do it. I don't know.
Or the world is yours.
That works too. That's a little safer. I'm not going to say the
yeah.
other one because I'll probably be banned from doing this on this platform.
You'll
But that's
canceled.
I think that's what we got for today, man. We're coming up on an hour. I think really really good news across the board in basketball for sure. Some pretty good news in Michigan football recruiting, at least in terms of momentum. Sure, you'd like to see some more splashes, but hey, man, you take good news where you can get it. There's been a little bit of bad news, like I said, with some guys eliminating Michigan or committing elsewhere, but 7 recruits over the course of a little bit of a month is solid. You like to get that recruiting momentum. I think there's more to come down the month of July, some higher name, bigger name guys, so Michigan's going to continue to have some momentum there. And then this NIL stuff, I'm just fired up about it because I do think Michigan could, like I said, you want to be leaders in best, do it here because it would make a massive difference and you've got everything in the world in your favor to absolutely crush this thing, and it wouldn't even matter how you started out of the gate because if you can get this right, it's going to stay right and it's going to be right for a long time, and you're gonna see fruits of it. And like I said, I mean, Miami, there's the blueprints right down there. Maybe it can't be exactly like that because of the state laws, but to my understanding, the fact that there are no state laws just means Michigan has a little bit more responsibility as a university to say what can and can't be done. And per the NCAA and NIL rules, that kind of thing can be done. So do it. I mean, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I don't know. Am I crazy, dude? Did I lose it a little bit there for the NIL stuff?
No, not at all. I think but this stuff makes you feel crazy, right?
Yeah.
It starts running through your head why isn't this there? And you start to see it happening around the country, and you want it to happen here, and it all comes from a place like I said. You want this program to do well and to be what you think they can be, and this is one surefire way to try and get there, right? They've got everything they need. It's just pull the trigger and do it. Get the kids paid and make it easy for them. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Don't take money off the table when these guys finally have the opportunity to go out and capitalize. If you're the University of Michigan, put your efforts behind supporting them, help them succeed, help them get paid, and then it's good for everybody, man.
You don't have to be directly involved with what they're doing or what kind of deals they're trying to get, but don't put red tape and hurdles in the way that makes it harder for them to do what they're now allowed to do. That just doesn't make any sense.
I mean,
it doesn't make any sense.
Guide them. You taught, there's colleges that have put in a curriculum.
Yep.
There's classes you can take and learn how to navigate through these waters, right? These kids need this stuff. T-shirt deals aren't going to be the game changer for the University of Michigan. It's going to have to be much bigger, and hopefully they're working on something that's going to, get them there.
There you have it. Hopefully we'll hear more about that down the line. I mean, we're still a couple months, what is it, almost 2 months to the day away from kickoff. And not that the start of the football season is when you have to have this stuff in place, but then, your focus shifts onto some other things, and kids aren't as worried about this stuff. I mean, they've got the actual game and the preparation and the grueling schedule, practice, class, all that stuff kind of back on their plate. So I think this window that is here right now is when a lot of this work needs to be done. Again, it should have been done a lot longer ago, but if it wasn't, you've got some time now. You've got some time, you've got the resources, you've got really smart people who can get something rolling. It needs to happen. It needs to happen. There you have it, man. We'll be back. What's today? Is today Tuesday? We missed the day, right?
It is, yeah.
Missed the day. So Tuesday, doing it in the middle of the day. We'll try to be back tomorrow. Maybe we'll skip a day and be back on Thursday. We'll try to get back to this Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing, but we'll be back here within the next couple of days to talk more stuff. We'll see you later.